Welcome back everybody, just Mike here. Anyway, today I have a anniversary clock. It's a Seth Thomas clock and the wires broke. So while I'm changing the wire, I'm going to go ahead and take the clock apart, clean it, and I'm also going to clean the mainspring. So this is my clock. It happened to come with the key. I'm not sure how it got crammed in here, but they got it in here somehow or another. There we go. And it's marked 6, so I almost doubt this is the original key. Wait, yeah, it is a 6 because it's got the number on it. Normally your original keys don't have any numbers, even though if it didn't have that number, because of the color of it, I'd almost think it belongs to that clock. So anyway, to get this off, there's a nut you have to unscrew here, and a nut you have to unscrew here, and we can get that out. So after taking the 2 nuts off, we can just pull this straight out carefully. It's very heavy because of all the glass. We do have a little bit of tarnish here right by where the nut was. There's a chip and actually a hole in the glass right there. And this is beveled glass, so it's not something you just change. You got the flour or wheat or whatever they call that there on both sides. So here's the pendulum, and I'm looking and I do believe it's in there, the brass piece that you need to connect the wire to. If those are missing, good luck finding the right one. Let me get a screwdriver and pull that out. So on here, to get this one out, this is spring loaded. You lift that up and there's a little pin in here that you can possibly slide out. So I got it out. It took some doing because it's in there real snug. Looks like it has a little smashed end in there just to hold it in. Not sure why, because it does have the spring that holds it totally down. But now, there's what you're looking for. That holds your wire. And also, if you can see on here, it shows there's an arrow with a plus or a minus, and that's how you would adjust these to go faster or slower. So now that we got that out, okay, around here, this needs to be polished because you can see a lot of the dust, ring, whatever you want to call it, where the glass was sitting. So on the back here, I don't see any screws, so it looks like you just push this in and it'll pop right out with these little catches here. Here's the wire, and up here I'll have to take the screw out in order to drop that down. And normally it's a real fine screw. This might even be too big on it. So I get my smaller screwdriver yet. So there's a small screw. It's still kind of hung up on the part of the clock that, oh, I see, they have it, so you have to lift it and then drop it onto the part that makes the clock tick. So looking at this, you'll notice how high it is up on the pendulum. And this is a key part here to get it up high enough so it'll still tick properly. You get too low and it'll start skipping gears because it's not turning far enough. So on these clocks, at least your better ones, there's usually a lever underneath here that you click, and this raises up and holds the pendulum up tight against here. And this clock doesn't have it. This clock has this here that once this is up and in place, sitting where it's supposed to, this will come across and lock it into place. By looking at it, I'm not sure how well that works, for the simple reason is it comes across. Yes, this isn't setting all the way down. This here is setting up a little bit. Unless it's supposed to really snug up against here, which it shouldn't. It needs room to breathe, we'll call it. So maybe it needs to be down just far enough that just the end of it will catch. Which doesn't sound right to me, because right here there's a little hole and it's like a ball bearing hits in it. And see, this doesn't go clear up in for it to be able to lock onto. So I'm not sure about that. So there you can see it says Seth Thomas. To get this movement out, we need to take the hands off, and then on the underside here, if you can see, there's two bolts that come up through and catch onto an arm like this on each side that I need to take off in order to get this movement off, so I can take good pictures before I tear it apart and clean the gears. These here plates I'm gonna hand wash and then use a toothpick in each one of the holes, because I don't want to lose that shiny finish that's on here. Now on these wheels, let's just call them here their feet, I'd suggest to put them all back to ground zero, as in screw them in all the way. You don't wrench them in there, you just finger them tight like this. And then when you get the clock cleaned and whatnot, when you go to level it for the spot it's going to set at, then go ahead and screw these out as needed in order to get that pendulum to sit in here, set in here, without it touching any of the sides. So anyway, let me go ahead and get these hands off and the two bolts out of the bottom, and we'll go from there. So here it is, separated. And with this off, I'm going to go ahead and get this cleaned up before I even attempt to put the clock back on. So to get the face separated from the movement, these are going to have to be turned, and you can see there inside there's a slot for this to fit in order to, once you get them turned, and then you should be able to pop that right off. And there you go. So someone's had this apart before. Yes, I'm barehanded too, but we have finger or thumb prints all over this thing. But it doesn't matter. As like I say, we're going to probably use a cleaner, and a good chance we might use a polish on here. So before you get carried away taking things apart, go ahead and take pictures, even though there's hardly anything here. Take a picture of that so you know possibly which gear and whatnot goes on here, and the placement, such as this has got a washer to hold that on, and that's got the C-clip on top of that to hold everything together. And as you can see here, it just has simple screws holding this together, but you want to get pictures of inside here. There's very few gears, but it doesn't hurt to get as many pictures as possible just in case. And also so you know which way this drum goes in, which is only obvious. There's a hole there for the winder. And while you're taking these pictures, this clock ran at one time. So this here, you might want to get a picture of it and possibly a measurement in between here to give you a better idea of the distance, because this clock ran before there, it's got to run there again. Now when it comes to this bottom part, you could, before you get this pendulum wire out, you can possibly also measure this, but most of it's going to go in between these plates here, because that's how the pendulum works or gets hooked up. Now when it comes to ordering the proper wire here for the pendulum, you normally look for the brand name of the clock and order it that route. But you might also have to use this name here when you're looking it up to figure out which wire it is you need. So on here I found this screw and this part here that holds your pendulum wire. I found that when your arm that makes the ticking action go back and forth on there, if it's going tick, 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 this is what you're going to turn in order to level this out for the ticking on that little arm there to even out. I'm taking the spring down. I'm surprised it didn't go down on its own after it broke, but you have to kind of wind it up, and there's a lever here you can push, and now it's free. And I'm using a key because I didn't realize there was anything really on it. It says it's a number 6. So that didn't take too much. There wasn't too much left there, so that's good. Finished taking out our screws to the frame now. I already had those two undone before I thought I'd better check that spring. So we'll lift this plate off. Let's see, even though it came loose, let's see if we can get this off so you can take a better look at the movement. Nope, they all come off with it, or 2 of them did. But we can put those back in so you can get a picture of this, of the placement of these gears. So now you get a lot better picture of what the gears look like and what it should look like when you're done putting this thing together. So let's go ahead and take it apart. I'm going to go ahead and take this is actually showing this is going to be the last one to go on. And of course I forgot to take that one off, which isn't a heart attack. But we do have this that came off. There's a washer that goes on there first to protect the brass, I'm sure. For your minute hand. And now I'll have to take that washer, that C-clip out of there. Now, I don't have to worry about this. I'm going to probably take it off too. Because, like I say, I'm kind of thinking about polishing the plate. I can see a bunch of little scratches in here already. So if someone did come in here and try repairing it, I'm going to give a wild guess, or maybe they're just dusting it. So let me get that off, and we'll get ready for the cleaner. So I did want to mention using a polish on the movement plate. This has got a shellac on there, and it's going to come off and not be per se as shiny. So when you're cleaning the stand, for example, are you sure you want to use a polish on there, or do you want to try either soap and water first and then use a glass cleaner on this to keep the shellac that's on here that gives it that extra shine? That's one thing you got to remember when you're polishing certain things. On the movement itself, I don't mind stripping this stuff off. Maybe I'll just do it on the inside. Already moving the grease around on there. So I might do just the inside, or I might do the outside too. This here's covered by the dial. This here's on the inside, so it's not per se as important. This is the face of the back. So there's not going to be per se too much that's going to be real shiny. But I'm going to try just using the Dawn dishwashing soap first on the plates, and then maybe if I really decide to, use the polish on it. But I'm almost thinking I'm going to stay away from the polish. So as for getting this barrel apart, I don't think there's necessarily a rhyme or reason why that hole is there. Some people like to mark it to try to get it back in the same space. I'm not as worried, I guess. So the way you get this thing apart, this here, you'll hammer, which you can see a bunch of holes already on here. You'll take and whack it there, because what you're doing is getting this to pop this plate off of there so you can get into where the spring is. And those feel kind of sharp, just letting you know. There we go. It almost looks like Vaseline or a grease that's in here. And that's really oily, like someone dumped some oil down inside that hole. And so we're going to go ahead and take this out and clean it with the ultrasound cleaner. And then I'm going to use WD-40 on the spring to super clean the spring. And then after that, I plan on using denatured alcohol to wipe off all that WD-40, because the WD-40 is a good cleaner, but it's also an acid and will start corroding. But then after I got it all clean, I actually do have a Mainspring oil that I'll wipe all the way up and down the spring, just to give it a very light, thin coat, hopefully, and make this clock work like it did from day one. So taking this mainspring out, you just pull it out, and it's gonna boing all over the place, but it's not gonna be as bad as what you might think. It does have the memory of this barrel, so it's not gonna be as bad as you would think. You just start kind of pulling it out until you can get a hold of it and rip it out of there. Let me get my gloves, because it's safer for me because I bleed. I bleed easy. I take a blood thinner. I kind of try to wind it up a little bit, and then it starts coming out. Now you need to get this hooked back in to that there. Sometimes you can put it in there and it'll hook itself, but most of the time you need to get that hooked on there, because otherwise you'll be tearing this apart trying to get it back on there again. And you can see it doesn't have that much spring in here. And looking at the spring, it actually doesn't look that bad. But here again, you see the way it's winding. More than likely that's going to pop out, or you could want it out. And you need to know which way the winding part is and the direction of the spring, so you don't put it in backwards, because this thing will go back in this way, but it won't work. So I'm going to clean my mainspring with WD-40. And this brown scratchy pad is not super scratchy, and that'll clean the old oil off of here that wasn't able to get cleaned when I ran it through the cleaner. And so I'm going to squirt this and then work this, and as I'm cleaning this I'm going to be stretching it out straight, so that way it gets rid of what memory it has, and when I cram it back into the barrel the way it's supposed to be, then it should run as long as it was meant to run, to 400 day or whatever this clock was. We also got these cleaned. I haven't dried them yet. You can see that grease or whatever that was in there really marked that up. I can't get that off. I might try a little bit of this on there just to help clean that up a little bit. And then we'll, once we get this cleaned, use denatured alcohol to wipe off all this WD-40, and then I'm going to use a Mainspring oil, or it's a lube it calls it, but it's a heavy oil, and that way things will be all ready to go and stick back into the barrel. So to get it back in the barrel, I wear my gloves because it's easier on my hands. Now I have to hook this on in there. Usually you go past it a bit until you can get this in, and then let it circle, And there it went on. And now, because you can do this, it is a little rough on the hands, but you can get it back in there. You just take your time. After the first circle, we're not past that part that had to catch. Pull the spring around it. Then you can start putting it back in. Continuously pushing down helps keep it in there. Even when you turn it with the other hand, you're pushing it down against your hand, because you don't want this thing to come out, you want it to go in. And once you get close to the end, it's like it's already small, so it just pops right in. And it might be best to wear gloves on both hands, because it is a little tough on your thumb pushing this thing in. Not close enough yet. Pretty close. So this is a very small barrel. There you go. Oh lordy. So I did clean this, that WD-40 the scratchy pad, and it looks a lot better. So what you gotta do is put this on here, and now you gotta tap it in, which that spring's sticking up a little bit still too. Or you might be able to shove this in by using a rag and a pair of pliers, but first try to pop it in. It's already in, I'm just making sure. So now to wait till the gears are ready. While I'm waiting for that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to hand wash the box and glass, and then I'll probably use a glass cleaner on it to finish it off. See if that cleans it good enough. You guys might have noticed it, but I didn't notice it until I was cleaning this. It had a heck of a dent right here, pulled out, and I put a rag across there and tapped it back kind of into place. It's noticeable, but it's not that noticeable, because once you put the clock together, you're looking at the time. That reflection that's a little bit dented will probably stick out, but I'm not worried. I'm just happy with the clock. And there it's on the, we'll say the back side anyway, because the face sits this way. I cleaned this the best I could. It looks a little odd. I'm not sure what that is, if that's still just this thing vibrating on there because the screws weren't tightened down or what. And this has that copper look. I thought that was rust, and when I cleaned this, the copper look started to show. But for a quick cleaning, it doesn't look bad. Well, I do believe I have it all together the way the pictures look. So now to put the plate back on. Now I got it all oiled, put together, and ready for the box. And I was on a forum, and they said to make sure to get the one that belongs to the clock, the name and everything. Not exactly sure why, except sometimes you do need the exact number to get the clock to tick and tick properly, get the proper time. So whether you have to spend more money or not, go ahead and get the right one. So as you can see here, this is the new wire on the back side, and this is still hooked up to this wire. They are normally longer, so don't be sticking that clear on the end because obviously it's not going to work. You need the pendulum to sit up and not rest down inside there. It can't hit anything. So go ahead and use the same size, and that's why I put a tape measure up against it to kind of show you the distance that they were or whatever. Like I say, where the part is that goes to the ticking of the clock, it's setting up pretty close to the top. As you can see, I used a cutting board or a hard surface, so that way I can get the screws out, and I also use the needle nose pliers to hold on to that because I don't want to wreck my new wire. So I have it together, and now to install it onto the pendulum and then the clock. You have to get this over the part in the clock that ticks. Get that screw in once I get it into place. So it seems to be ticking away just fine. Obviously I don't know if the speed is right on it yet or not. And once you get your wire set up in here, look inside and see if it's actually ticking, because if it's not, this screw here, you're going to have to mess with just a little bit one way or another in order to get it to tick, because it has to line up with the wire, I guess is what we'll call it, and this bar that goes over that hit the part that actually makes it tick. So anyway, I'm going to let it run for a while like that and see how well it does, whether it needs to speed up, slow down, or what. But so far, things are looking good. So there's the Seth Thomas clock working and seems to be doing fine. And I also want to mention too, just because we'll say this says Steth Thomas on it, doesn't mean that's the type of wire for the pendulum that you're looking for. Look on the movement itself, and it normally will say what type of movement it is, so you know what type of wire to buy if your wire is broken. Now on your clock, you normally have 3 feet. There's one there, one here, and one in the back. You want to level your clock, such as look at the bottom of the pendulum, and you don't, that half ball, I guess we'll say, that's below it. You want it, your goal is to actually try to get it into the center of it, but you don't want to touch that ball that's down in there. And also, when it comes to changing the speed, the disc that's on top of this pendulum here shows the plus and the minus to know whether you want to slow your clock down or speed it up. Just because you had it set before and then years down the road that wire broke, that doesn't mean it's still going to be there because you messed with the wire, and the wire might be a different length now. Could either be longer or shorter, and so you're going to have to pay attention to that to get your time set just right. So anyway, I hope you did learn something about the Seth Thomas or any anniversary clock on kind of how to order your wire, get your wire back on, and do your adjustments as needed. Just remember that on the top of the pendulum wire, that part that goes in the clock that moves back and forth to make it tick, you don't want it real low, especially because it's going to start touching the movement framework. But as you saw, it's up there a little bit higher, and if your wire didn't break up above, you'll kind of already have your measurement there. So anyway, thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe because it's free. And leave me a comment. I appreciate it. A great thumbs up is actually fantastic, only because of YouTube wanting that. So anyway, and I enjoy the thumbs up too. Don't get me wrong there. So anyway, until next time, God bless, and I'll see you next time when I'm doing another clock, I'm sure.